What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today we're doing it's the season finale, guys, of Only Murders in the Building. Is this the end of the road for our trio? They all died. And just in case you haven't seen this yet, everybody's dead. It's the end of the show. Surprise ending. Series canceled. Meryl Streep was the killer. Everybody's dead. I, you know, it was just shock to me too. It was a shock to everybody. We were all just, uh, you know, but just that's not what happened. But wouldn't that have been amazing if it was? Just Meryl Streep stealthily been the killer since she was first introduced. Um, it also wasn't who I thought it was from the beginning, which is sort of disappointing because I was like, he's getting a lot of screen time, but really shockingly absent towards the last couple episodes of the season. Howard, I was like, where the fuck did Howard go? How is he like all over this show for some episodes, and then like later on, like he's getting in the car with them, he's like, like there's so many times that Howard was included. It's like almost they were trying to make him a fourth. Like they were like, what if Howard joined the podcast? you know um and then he just kind of vanishes, and it's so bizarre, so weird. His lack of screen time towards the end of the season is bizarre to me, comparatively to the rest of the season. So the when's last we left, we knew who the killer was at the end of the ninth episode. So it was a gag at the beginning of, because if you had watched episode 9, you would know, or even my recap of episode 9, you would know that it was the writer, who's using a pseudonym, who essentially, their career was ruined as a stuntman, even though they trust Zaz. But Zaz was nice enough to support them as a writer and was like, hey man, now you have more time to write, your writing has inspired me to write. And so she wrote the Only Murders in the Building movie, which he thought was better than his. So he stole it and shopped it around, and he got a deal with it with his fake pseudonym on it instead of Zaz's name on it. And he killed her for it. He killed her so that it turned out he was a marksman. There was sort of a little bit of a clunky backstory about how he was a hunter. He was like, I came with my story where my dad wanted me to be a killer and would take me out on the range. And I was like, oh God. So that explains how you knew how to shoot guns. Like, anyway, that felt very sort of like, well, like they didn't know how else to put it in there. So they were like, oh crap, how is he such a good marksman? Backstory. There we go. We'll put it in the backstory. So they roped that in there, so you never would have thought of it otherwise, because it's impossible to know that was his backstory if you're trying to think of, man, the whole thing hinges on somebody who's a really good marksman. Who would be a really good marksman? I was expecting him to say maybe he had military background and we didn't know about that, which is why he made also for an excellent stuntman, is because he had been through like basic, and then he left. That would have made way more sense than the backstory they gave, which is like, my dad took me on the sniper range, but I really wanted to be a writer, so I left. It's like, why couldn't he just be a former Marine or something like that, who had plenty of range experience, and then left when he got, discharged. He was like, I want to be a writer, but he couldn't get jobs as a writer. And then Zaz was like, oh my God, you have this experience doing, all this combat training. You'd be a great stuntman, let's get you in there. Like, anyway, yes, I can do your job for you, writers. I can make things better. But that explains how we got to the death of Zaz. And obviously, Oliver and Charles are trying to figure out how to save Mabel because she's trapped in there. They literally go out on a ledge for her. Not figuratively, not metaphorically, but they literally go out on a ledge for her, and they climb around the exterior of the building, and climb in through the window, which they realize is how he did it in 12 minutes. Which also, they introduced this whole thing because obviously they're high up and Oliver and Charles are terrified of doing the whole thing. And he drops a sign about having, yeah, it's pretty easy when you don't have a fear of heights. And it's like, yeah, that would have been great if you were a fucking Marine. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is your backstory? They're just like, they're throwing all these, it's almost like it would have been really, like when you're actually trying to tie the clues together, you're like, some of these clues you're kind of throwing in at the last minute, like you didn't really offer them to us, and you're like explaining everything at the last minute. Like, who would have thought, by the way, that, oh, well, he clearly climbed around the exterior of the building because he has no fear of heights. That's how the writer of the movie got from point A to point B. I mean, I ended up tangentially guessing him just based on screen time and like where they were headed and the weird writing that he was doing and the mention. I mentioned it, that the tell was the rewrite in the last episode, even before it was revealed, was when she asked for to do the rewrites. I was like, oh, it's him, because she's basically admitting to the fact that everything is not the same. It's like the script came in great, but now every time he does a rewrite, it's awful. Well, because he didn't write the script, because he's not who he says he is. So, yeah, that was the tell for me. But I don't know, they get in there, they use this Eva Longoria pen, which does like 20 different things. And some of the Westies come in and they provide a distraction, so they're there. And they subdue him, and they get their man, and Mabel survives, and Oliver and Charles survive, and there's a bit about Oliver. Loretta needs to move to New Zealand. Isn't she on Grey's Anatomy? Like, I thought she was like, she's talking about they're moving the show, and then she says, yeah, it's easier to move blank to New Zealand. And I was like, weren't you on Grey's Anatomy? Like, I thought I specifically remember them saying like she was leaving to go do Grey's Anatomy. Maybe I fever dreamed that, but I'm like, they're not moving Seattle Grace to New Zealand. That's an absurd plot line. Like, season 22 of Grey's Anatomy, we're moving to New Zealand. The whole fucking hospital. Like, what? So yeah, her TV show is changing locations, which is sort of a drastic move for. I can't even see. Can you see it? What TV show is gonna do that? Like, you're just watching a show and like all of a sudden that show is in New Zealand, and you're like, wait, is Tracker now in New Zealand? Why? How does this even work? What's he doing in New Zealand? Like, because she made it sound like the show, like they were actually moving, not just to like because it was cheaper, but like within the context of the show that they would be moving there. Weird. But so Oliver has to make this choice to follow Loretta, which he goes through with the marriage. I mean, they get married. And they made so many jokes about how the wedding day could be ruined and something might happen that I was like, maybe they'll kill off Meryl Streep at the end of this episode. Because they were really leaning into it. And then obviously that was just their way of being funny. Because that's not what happens. They get married. She drives off. She's like, you'll join me shortly. And he's like, of course, my love. Which means he would have to leave Charles behind. Which would be the end of the series, which might actually be the thing. They may do one more season, and then Oliver at the end of the season moves and joins Loretta. We don't know, but the fact that he knows what that means to leave Charles, and they've talked about it, and he still makes the commitment to Loretta. Who knows what that means for them? But this show can't go on forever. But the murdered victim for next season is Lester, the doorman. They find him dead in the fountain outside. I guess there's a fountain outside. Things we learned through audio description that you've probably seen in the background for plenty of times. There's the courtyard with a fountain in it, I guess. Yeah, surprise. I had actually forgotten who Lester was because he wasn't as significant to the plot, but I was like, I know that name, but which character is Lester? Took me a minute. And Yeah, Doorman. So, sort of an OG character got bumped off, but why? But who? Find out next season on Only Murders in the Building. Although, it's not in the building, it's tangentially next to the building. It's within the confines of the complex. Near the building. Only Murders near the building. Which is kind of funny because some random, I don't know if it's going to matter into next season, but she's like, are you Charles? I was really hoping I could hire you to find out who this man is. And he's like, we're not detectives, we're podcasters. You can't just hire us to find people. And she's like, oh, well, I tried. And she leaves. I was like, well, that girl's going to die. And she didn't. And I wonder if that mystery is going to play into this, or if that was just like a gag, like a one-off, like, no, we're not detectives, we're podcasters. Like, it's great that you think that we are, like, cool, fun, haha. But so maybe that mystery of who that guy was that this random lady just approaches Charles with right at the end. But what I thought was funny, my takeaway from it, why I'm not sure it's going to bleed into season 5, is that he's like, no, we only do murders in the building. And then, of course, Lester is outside the building. Not far from the building, but technically outside the building. So it really kind of stretches the title of Only Murders in the Building. Anyway, I like the season. I like the guest stars. If I had to predict who's getting Emmy nominations, I think the show, there's only just so much you can do with it, which they're obviously finding out now. They have to have a murder outside the building because there's only just so many people who can be murdered in the building. I think they have some guest star potential. It'll be interesting to see who gets guest star nominations, because there's some people here who definitely showed up and didn't do enough episodes that qualify easily, like Melissa McCarthy. I would argue Davine Joy Randolph has a shot because she wasn't used enough to really be considered a series regular. Amy Ryan, same with her. She should be considered a guest actress. So, and possibly even Jane Lynch. Her screen time is very limited. So Paul Rudd maybe would be considered a guest actor. Maybe Meryl Streep. It depends on screen time with episodes and everything like that, and how many episodes did they appear in. And I don't know what the minimum is anymore. I used to know what it was when everybody was producing like 23 episode seasons, but now I don't conceptually understand when we have shows that are like maybe even like 6 episode seasons. It's like, how do you get a guest star? But yeah, I think the leads have a shot. I would be surprised. I think Howard has a shot at getting a supporting nomination with the amount of screen time he had. So there are people on the table here that I don't know if they would pick up Eugene, Zach, or Eva. Because to pick one of them feels odd, because I'm not sure that one of them necessarily outdid any of the others. And it's sort of like one of those things where you wish you could nominate people in groups, because it's like not nominating one. Like, I feel that way about when people have to choose between Steve Martin and Martin Short, and it's almost like, God, their performances are so tied together. I would either, if I was voting for an awards body, I would either not vote for either of them, or I'd vote for both of them. But then it would make it so hard for me to vote for them to win, because I wouldn't be able to choose one over the other. Because they essentially support each other in such a way, makes it so hard to pick. I don't know how these people used to do it in like the Laverne and Shirley days. It's like, how do you pick one? Like, what do you do? But that's it. That's the end of the season. And maybe I'll be back for season 5. We'll see when that happens. They've been pretty good about getting these out every year. They name dropped Tom Hanks. I would love to see Tom Hanks on this show. They've had so many huge stars that I don't think Tom Hanks is outside the realm of possibility. I love that they put Meryl Streep in New Zealand so that she doesn't have to come back for season 5. so that they can be like, she's in New Zealand, she's so far away that it would be asinine for her to come back. Like, they could do phone calls and text messaging. Like, she's still in the universe, but not close by. So, I would say Tom Hanks is probably my wish casting for season 5, if I could get somebody on the show. Also, and this is one that a lot of fans have wanted, Chevy Chase. Even for an episode, you know? Chevy Chase would be, I know, nobody wants to work with him. One episode, give him one episode, put him on there, and reunite Chevy, Steve, and Martin. Unless Steve and Martin just don't want to work with him, in which case, by all means, continue to just ignore us. If they're like, nah, dude, it's our choice, and there's a reason. But if it's just, well, we've heard he's difficult, and he just, I don't know, you can make it happen. So, I'll give the season finale an A-. Like I said, I liked it, but some of that was really clunky, where they were like, oh, we had these aspects of him that we have to kind of throw in there. This is why he's good at shooting, and this is how he was able to crawl along the edge. Kind of just felt like they were just like little drops of information, not something that you could actually go back and look at how well it was woven in, you know? I was like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. I still was able to guess him regardless of that, but so I didn't feel like it was completely out of nowhere. Anyway, thank you for joining me this season, and I'll be back later. Until then, see you guys on the other side.